to Planning, and Jean Knutson is our chair.
Thank you, Pinky. We have one item, consideration of a request by Lydia Place for comprehensive plan and zoning text amendment. With me on the committee is Dan Hamill and April Barker. Turn it over to Gregory.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. At your last meeting, we had a public hearing. There were several issues that came out of that hearing that we responded to in your council packet on page 34, beginning on page 34, and also representatives of Lydia Place submitted written comments as well addressing those issues. There are basically three. One would be a cap on the number of occupants of the total facility, and staff doesn't support picking an arbitrary number, especially if it's occupants. That would be very difficult for us to monitor and enforce. If council does believe that a cap is appropriate, we should talk about how we might do that, either through zoning or another way. There was talk about requiring additional supervision on site, 24-hour supervision, for example. That's really a funding issue for Lydia Place, and they responded to that in their written comments. And finally, Planning Commission's recommended condition that there be an organizational master plan that would be submitted, reviewed, and approved by the city. And we don't think that that's an appropriate condition for a zoning code. The condition is really non-specific. It doesn't say who should review it, who should approve it, what criteria would be used to review it and approve it. It may be appropriate to do that through a funding mechanism where there's actually a contractual agreement, and that we could monitor through that method, and that would be acceptable to us and also to Lydia Place. Those are the three major issues. Other than that, the questions about impacts on the neighborhood, noise, parking, those other things, that there are nuisance laws in place that can deal with those issues, and so we don't think that it's appropriate to try and deal with those through zoning. We do think this is an appropriate request. We have supported it from the beginning. We do recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission, and we're hoping to get a positive recommendation from the committee this afternoon.
Thank you, Greg. Committee, go ahead.
I'm going to move approval on this.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, Pinky, I'm sorry.
I'm not on the committee, but if I may,
Sure.
I just wanted to throw something out there. So we have received a fair amount of inquiries on this Lydia Place zoning, and one of the things that I wanted to speak to was they were concerned about the neighborhood, about the increased levels of noise, etc. So we reached out to our police department to see what kind of records or any misdemeanors or anything that have happened in the neighborhood or around Lydia Place. And as of 2012, there are absolutely no reports and no charges whatsoever. So I just wanted to say that if you do have a concern, do please call your police department. But we did do our research, and there are no outstanding complaints or issues in this neighborhood. So I just wanted to address that issue.
Michael.
Yeah, I guess what I see often happens in cases like this, we get a zoning decision and instead we talk about the project. And a zoning decision should not be about Lydia Place. It should be like uses like Lydia Place. What rules need to be in place for a Lydia Place-like thing? So I think there are some legitimate concerns, but I don't think the proposals seem to be aimed at Lydia Place and Lydia Place's problems rather than problems created by the zoning. So I'm also sure, for example, the idea of some organizational master plan would work. What if Lydia Place became privately funded? What if some other nonprofit came in and they were privately funded? There would be no contract with the city, no means for us to require an organizational master plan. That's kind of an example of where I think that the solutions are aimed at Lydia Place and its potential problems rather than at the zoning. So I still would like to see something that was like zoning appropriate that applied for all time and all places for similar uses. I mean, so Greg, do you think are there any rules at all that govern Lydia Place-like entities? The zoning rules seem to apply just to the buildings, not to the operation, not to its potential impacts. Other than a cap which doesn't exist, are there any rules that address those impacts?
Not through zoning, Michael. A cap on the number of units would be the primary way that you would control the size. There are, of course, zoning rules in place that will limit the size of the building. The height limit would be 35 feet, the same as for a single-family house. So you can limit the size of the development through zoning, and the scale through a cap on the number of units. There's also design review that will be required that will address the way the building looks, the way it functions, the way it addresses the street frontage and so forth. Parking requirements, landscaping requirements, and so forth.
So is there any instance in our zoning code where we do put some sort of operational limits on nonprofits or for-profits?
Not that I'm
have an
aware
impact?
of. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
April.
Well, I'll certainly be voting yes for this. I saw the mayor there, the homeless project, Project Homeless Connect, and I want to thank Dan. I know in your personal life you helped organize that, and it was really a phenomenal event in the sense of what all happened there. And it was a time where a person that you might regularly see downtown or on a corner, you have built some stereotypes or made a narrative for them, and then here you were in this place of bringing help and connecting and really meeting people in a different place when they're getting support, they're getting the things they need. So with the Alice report that says 49% of all Bellingham people are living pretty much at a living poverty or in poverty, with all the problems that we know are happening nationally, every neighborhood's going to have something like this. So we need to get over that part of it. And I don't think we should micromanage our nonprofits and our people that are out there trying to help. And it's totally disrespectful. We would never do that to other businesses. And therefore, that seems a little prejudiced to me. So I'd like to get beyond that because we're going to have more proposals. We're going to have more changes that need to come up. And we cannot discriminate just because people are in a different place in their life. And this is caused from when people are children that we did not give their built environment appropriately. And they have literally brain chemistry changes that will not make them a progressive and an appropriate adult. And I say appropriate in the sense that they're going to make less money, they're going to have more difficulties in life. We know they're probably more susceptible to drug and alcohol abuse and domestic violence. All these things happen because of how we said, stay out of our neighborhood, and you can live over there. So if this anything that comes up further, I think we should support and do it. And I think as a council, we should not allow the attacking of especially when it's a class type thing. So I'm happy to hear legitimate concerns. We don't have crime concerns. We don't have safety concerns. And I do also suggest, please call 911 for your benefit and everybody else's. An organization, any kind of business would have no idea that they're impacting you if you don't tell somebody about it. So thank you so much to Lydia Place and DV-SAS and Bellingham Housing Authority and all the people that are stepping up to the plate. And I'm excited to vote yes, and I'm excited to welcome you into our neighborhood as well. So,
Roxanne.
I just also want to echo and add a couple of little thoughts. I have a really strong background in neighborhood improvement, just improving every street that I've ever lived on. And you can't imagine what I've lived amongst between drug dealers, from prostitution to gangsters and all kinds of situations in the communities that I've lived in. The number one thing that I have found to be so successful is partnering with the property owner. And I strongly encourage anybody in this neighborhood who has a concern to reach out to Lydia Place to tell them what your concerns are. But also, certainly, if it's a noise violation which is impacting your quality of life, call 911. But definitely report things to the police department, report things to the organization. That's what creates a better neighborhood.
Anybody else? Dan.
Just with respect to Councilmember Barker's remarks, I do agree that neighborhoods do need to absorb some types of housing, but the reality is that most Bellingham neighborhoods already have housing, not just like this facility, but also in the scattered site model, which is extensively used by our homeless housing providers through the tenant-based rental assistance program. So many apartment buildings already have set-aside apartments that are housing families that were on the streets or were in cars, and you just wouldn't be able to see that. With this particular facility, it's a little more visible, but the reality is that most neighborhoods in Bellingham, an overwhelming majority, already are working, already have this type of housing or are housing individuals who were formerly homeless.
Okay, anything else? Just to make sure, Dan, your motion is to approve the ordinance to plan and zoning text amendments with no conditions.
That's correct.
Okay? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Thank you, good luck, and end the committee. Oh, just to clarify, I'll bring this forward to the full council tonight, I'm sorry.